Welcome to Wellness Curated. This is your host, Anshu Bahanda, and the aim of this podcast, Wellness Curated, is to make you lead a healthier, happier, more hopeful life, which we do by getting you ideas, tools, tips, techniques from all over the world. This season, we're going to focus on emotions, which is a fundamental part of the human experience. Now, today's episode is about toxic positivity. Now, there's been a cultural movement of sorts which has almost become an expectation now, and that is that we have to be positive. We have psychologist Dr. Seema Hingorrany, who's going to talk us through this, and we're going to discuss the flip side of positivity. Is it healthy to be suppressing emotions? Is it healthy to force yourself to feel positive when you're dealing with all kinds of emotions, all kinds of issues? Or is it harmful to do that? People begin to feel that their feelings aren't important, that what they're feeling is wrong when they're feeling negative emotions. Does just forcing yourself to be positive sometimes interrupt your healing process? Does it come in the way of overcoming something, of overcoming trauma? There are a million questions, and this is a very, very important topic because socially, what you hear from everywhere and everyone is be positive. So welcome to this show, Dr. Hingorrany, and thank you for being here with us today.
No, most welcome. It's my pleasure.
So let's get into toxic positivity. What is it? And how can it weigh on one's mental health?
So this is this trend going on, and I see this in my clients, that they have this need to be very positive all the time. I feel toxic positivity is one, rejecting your own emotions. That's negative emotions, which we all have, and I will come to that. Suppressing your emotions, negative, abandoning your emotions, that's negative, which is for me very, very unhealthy. Toxic positivity for me also is not to have strength to admit that we have negative emotions. Emotions are both negative and positive. So if I'm giving up on my negative emotions, I'm suppressing, I'm actually stopping to process. That's toxic positivity for me.
So do you think it's more in women or in men? Because, in some cultures, you find that women want to, especially when it comes to their families, they want to say everything is okay. They want to feel, no matter what they're going through, they just suppress it because there's this expectation from society. But on the other hand, you find that men are also taught, you're not meant to cry. You're the provider. You're meant to be in charge. So they have a lot of suppressed emotions as well. So would you comment on that?
No, I see toxic positivity in both the genders. I see in women, I see in men, but in different dimensions. So women are supposed to be positive all the time because they're responsible for the family, like you said. They're responsible for their kids. So a woman came to me and she said that I'm not able to admit my negative emotions in the therapy room today because I feel if I'm going to be negative, it's going to have negative impact on my kids. I'm like, it's the other way around. If you're not processing your negative emotions and if you're not healing from them, if you're not talking about your traumas, anyways, it's going to affect your kids. And she said, how? I said, then it's going to manifest in different ways. So people don't understand this when we are suppressing the emotions, what it's doing to you. Where men are concerned, like you rightly said, you're not supposed to cry, you're a man, so again, suppressing. So both these genders suppress emotions, but in a different way, leading to toxic positivity because we all need something to cling on to, right? So then we cling on to toxic positivity. Oh, I'm positive all the time. I'm positive without realizing that the emotions are then going and getting trapped in a different way.
I also feel that in women's case, what happens is when we suppress our emotions, or actually even in the case of men, it almost goes into our cells. It becomes cellular memory and it becomes trauma. It's all one step at a time. And then the trauma causes physical ailments. So it becomes like a spiral.
So, Anshu, these days, in fact, we are treating more of physical ailments. You name it, we have it. You see all the skin disorders. We see arthritis worsening, PCOD, PCOS, gastro problems, autoimmune disorders I see. And the worst is the cancer. All these are your cells storing trauma, complex PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD is what? It's intrusive trauma which has not been processed, not been dealt with. Then there are two ways of looking at it. Either I have someone to hold space for me, where I talk about the event and I process, or I suppress. So what we are talking about, extreme toxic positivity, is me not talking about it because of shame associated, that I have to be this strong woman, I cannot be vulnerable.
And tell me, do you think social media contributes to toxic positivity?
A lot. 65 to 70% of my client in conversations talk about that I see my friends Instagram page or Facebook page, and I see them all so happy, and I want to be that happy, without realizing our circumstances are different, experiences are different, how we look, what lens do we use, and we don't know 5 minutes prior what happened before the picture was clicked and what's going to happen 5 minutes later. So social media has a very important role to play, but we humans also use it as a very negative tool. We want to see what we want to see. We are seeing everybody as happy and me as a victim. Then it's not going to help. So social media, yes, but also if I keep changing the lens and I say, you know what, I don't want to compare my life with people. They are happy, good for them. I have to look at my internal experience, then I'm blessed.
And how does one deal with this social media situation? Do you limit screen time? In today's day and age, people are using phones for everything. So how do we limit it?
Anshu, balance of everything is important. I have a lot of women and men coming to me with addictions with their phone. It's because they're not dividing their time in a balanced way. So where is the root of addiction that we need to trace? How I have addictions for, say, suppose my clients come with addiction of sweets, alcohol, substance abuse, Netflix, you name it, I have it. The root cause is your belief system, your trauma, your negative belief. If I'm going to feel I'm not good enough, I'm going to be taking pleasure into other people's life. So my request to all people who are listening, go back to the roots and see, why don't you have a balanced time? Be on your phone. Monitor your weekly hours on the phone. Are you reading a good book? Are you doing your meditation? Are you going for your walks? Are you co-regulating with people in person? Meet your friends, go for coffee. Half your problem will be solved.
So when most of our loved ones come to us, and people will vouch for this, you try and give them hope. You try and say to them, look, tomorrow's going to be a better day. Be positive. It's not the end of the world. But are we actually inculcating toxic positivity in them?
So I tell my clients who also come to me for advice how to deal with someone negative or depressed in their family. And I say, okay, this is good to use. This is a positive statement. No therapist is going to say don't use. But constantly using this when a person is talking about their emotions and feelings is actually dismissing their feelings and emotions and negating them. So while I tell my clients to be positive, I said, okay, let's first work on your negative emotions. Let's see, what are you actually feeling and thinking? Toxic positivity is when I'm actually telling them, no, you're not going to talk about your negative thoughts and feelings. That's dangerous. Your processing will stop there. So if you really want to help someone, say, you know what, it's good to be positive, but can you talk about what negative emotions do you have? Or can you go to a mental health expert to talk about your anything? Encourage the person to talk about negative. Then give them this bit piece of advice.
When, just following up from what you've said, when someone comes to you with an issue, or you see someone who's quite upset, who's grieving for whatever, when is the right time to tell them to be positive? And when would you tell them you need to grieve? How would a layman judge that?
Oh, depends on the intensity of symptoms. If I'm teaching someone how to deal with people who are grieving, see the intensity of trauma that has happened. If it's a minor fight between two friends, you can, they will be able to self-regulate in about a day or two. But if a death has happened, financial loss, financial debts in the family, like I said, losing a loved one, or loss of a job, or if a teenager comes to me and say, hey, you know what, my parents are separating, I can't tell him, oh, be positive. Totally depends on the intensity of trauma and the symptoms, presenting symptoms. So like I said, if there's a mild symptom, this positive statement will work. Most times when people go through something severe, their nervous system shuts down. They experience numbness. Fight, flight, freeze mode. In fight, flight, freeze mode, you cannot expect them to register positive statements. I will register positive statements when I'm moving from fight, flight, freeze mode to a mode of nervous system where my brain is digesting thoughts, emotions, and feelings. That is the time if you tell me, hey, Seema, why can't you be positive? Why can't you look at this way? Using different perceptions with me, I will be able to. In my fight, flight, freeze, I will not be able to. And it's not difficult to judge as a layperson, you know. If you are attuned with a person, you can.
But Seema, there are situations where someone is going through a trauma but doesn't know it. And the people around them do not know it because they've suppressed it so well.
Right. Somewhere the presenting symptoms will show. If my client is, or if any person, not even my client, a friend is laughing too much or is totally shut down. So it's a thin line, but not, it can be made out easily. I mean, even lay people can make out that, you know, this person is trying to put up a front.
So most people are trying to be the best parents that they can, right, to their children. And they're trying to teach them about positivity. How can we also teach our children to embrace negative emotions and deal with them, not suppress them?
Good question. So when something negative happens, which usually happens in everyone's life, say in school, or if a child has gotten into an issue with a teacher or with a bully, allow them to talk and say it's normal to go through this challenge. What are you feeling? Tell them that they can honor their negative feelings and hold space for them. This is how teens and children realize that challenges will happen and there is an associated emotion. I have a lot of teens and they come to me and say, is it okay I'm feeling this way? And I validate that. And I say, yes, it is absolutely fine. Oh, but my mom taught me that I'm not supposed to feel my feelings and I'm supposed to feel positive all the time. And she says that positivity will attract more positivity. So I'm scared to feel negative now. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I cannot feel positive all the time. So validate that if I'm feeling my negative emotions, I'm still normal. The normal people can feel all kinds of emotions. And once you tell them that, trust me, they have such a sigh of relief. It's okay to feel jealous. I say, yes. Sometimes, yes. It's okay to feel sad. I said, yes. Anger, yes. Let's not run away from these emotions, Anshu. They are integral part of us in our evolution. Feeling too much of it is not normal, and feeling persistently for 6 months is not normal either.
And you've got toxic positivity on the one side, right? And on the other side, you've got emotional authenticity. What happens is sometimes you can go too far into your negative emotions and it becomes a downward spiral. So how does one prevent that?
Like I said, it's the balance. If I am going to go into negativity and I'm playing a victim role all the time without doing any self-reflection work, if I'm not taking an appointment with my therapist, if I'm not talking to my friend authentically that, look, I'm feeling this. So if I'm internalizing way too much, if I'm victimizing, if I'm crying a lot, if my self-worth is not increasing and it's happening for a longer period of time, then one needs to find some resource to come out. And if someone is giving that resource, take it, you know. So if I'm being authentic with myself, I also have to understand that, hey, Seema, something is not looking right. I'm not having gratitude for a lot of things I should feel gratitude for. I need to feel happy with happy occasions in my life, you know, or whatever I have around me. So toxic positivity, of course, it's you know, when I'm having a lot of negative emotions, but yet forcing myself to feel positive. In this authenticity, I'm taking responsibility and ownership of my negative emotions and I'm doing something about it.
Now, when you're going through a negative emotion, do you, depending on the severity of the situation, like you've just said to us, would you set yourself a time frame that it's okay to grieve till for a month, for a year, for 2 months, for 2 weeks, for a day, depending on the severity, and then I'll be fine? I mean, you see all kinds of methods that people recommend. I mean, I've had people, therapists say, grieve, play a sad song and grieve to it every day so you get out your emotions. Someone else actually scheduled in their grieving time.
Everyone is wired differently. Everyone's resources are different. Some people who come to me, they don't have resources. They don't have healthy human beings around them, or healthy people to even make you recognize your symptoms, So best option is to get assessment with a mental health expert who will actually first understand the severity of your trauma. See, if a person comes to me and has undergone trauma for many, many years, it's going to be a little difficult for that person to process and come out of the trauma. If it's a death, maybe 3 months to 4 months. But if Anshu symptoms are worsening, then medical help is required. But totally depends on fortunately, on the luck of the person who's around them. What is the support system? Say a person comes to me, if it has a very, very good, healthy family, they come out of the trauma very easily, vis-a-vis other person who doesn't have that healthy network. Okay, it depends on totally on the severity of the negative experience one has had. So, for example, if a client comes to me and says, hey, I had a huge fight with a friend of mine, it is a shock to the nervous system. It was not expected. Years of friendship and you're blocked on WhatsApp. Maybe I will tell my client, they give it 2-3 days. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how you feel. Maybe betrayed anger. So the person identifies emotion. So usually with these cases, because this is mild to moderate negative experience, the person should come out in a week's time. The more severe the trauma, for example, say, I had a client that day and she has a death of the mother. And she said, how much time I'm going to take? Maybe 3 months, 4 months. And with the help of the resources that we are putting in front of her, or she's also having access to.
So can you give us a little tool that you would give them? That, not everyone, as an example, not everyone can afford therapy, right? Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
There are a lot of checklist inventories for depression scale and mild depression to moderate and severe. Go and do that mild, depression inventory or anxiety inventory online. And if you think the symptoms are getting moderate to severe in coming weeks or months, then mental health help is required. Even if you can't afford, there are many mental health professionals who do work with less money or pro bono. You can still take help. Don't sit on the symptoms. So these depression inventories or anxiety inventories are easily accessible online, free of cost, on authentic websites. So please go and check that. Even PTSD scale, by the way, is available online.
It's a normal life situation that we all go through, but someone is trying to deal with it. Can you give us a little tool that they can use?
For that, you don't require an inventory. All I suggest is journal your thoughts. All I suggest is do a little breath work, calm your nervous system down. Whomever you're sharing authentic bond with, tell them that you want to share the space with them. Don't sit on your emotions, because in 3 days, the brain is going to process and you're going to feel much better.
That's very helpful, Seema. Journal your thoughts, do some breath work, and talk to somebody. Talk to someone who you trust.
Yes, I will add a very valuable input here as well. Anshu, in my research, I've seen that taking your vitamins on time, doing self-care, helps to deal with the symptoms better when the negative experience occurs. So for me, my self-care will be going for a walk, or maybe anywhere in the garden or a park. Taking vitamins like B12 and D3 really helps to support mental health. Magnesium is a holy grail. Taking 200 mg of magnesium every day when you're going through any kind of negative experiences really help. Do it under medical supervision, of course, but it really helps. So
Thank you.
That's an important.
And I also wanted to ask you something quite topical. So the world is going through a crazy time, right? There's so much uncertainty about jobs. And people are trying desperately to keep their jobs. So even if they're going through something personally, mentally, if they're feeling emotionally unbalanced, they won't take, a lot of people won't take time off about it. They won't do anything about it. Can you suggest something that will help them? And also, do you know if organizations are doing anything to help? Because they'll just put up this positive front.
I think somewhere the awareness, like your podcast is doing, and watching more podcasts about how to handle emotions is the warm welcome for these kind of people. Because when I hear that there are other people also going through something similar, see, Anshu, the first basic question I get in my practice is, "Oh, is this normal? Is it normal to go through this? Is it normal? Do you have other clients as well?" Mostly, I'm asked this question. I say, "Yeah, it's absolutely normal." The feeling that I'm going through something negative makes me not normal, and that's scary. So the request is to read few books on mental health, to watch podcasts like this, to understand that being positive all the time is in fact not healthy. It's okay to feel negative sometimes. Talking to people who have undergone some kind of depression and anxiety, and usually you stumble upon these people. Oh, she was going through that. Pick up the phone and call. I had a client who did that. She called up someone who lost a job, and she said, "How did you feel?" And her feelings matched. And she was like, "I felt so validated." She felt the same I'm feeling. I'm like, absolutely. So these kind of things really help. Other than the internal work that we both discussed about journaling and all, this is like stepping out in the external world and seeing that, okay, everybody is going through something. I'm not alone. That's a feeling we want to give people.
Okay. So now that brings us very nicely to positive action. Talk to us about how to move from positive thinking to positive action.
For me, positive action is something that's consistent. Like I said, first step is self-awareness. Like, I'm very aware of my feelings and emotions. Have I picked up learned helplessness from someone in my family, maybe my aunt or my mom, my bua, my chachi, whoever? Have I picked up learned helplessness, and get rid of that learned helplessness is a positive action for me. Second thing, like I said, self-care is positive action for me. Where I have set up a routine, or most clients are inconsistent in their routine. So emotional eating is something. High levels of sugar is going to dysregulate your system. And then your coping methods to deal with any experience, negative experience or traumatic experience, is going to be difficult. So a lot of my clients' first checklist inventory is, are you having a lot of sugar? Yes. So stop having that extra white sugar, stop having that extra carbs, every day without fail, spend 10 minutes in silence. And many people can't do that. You know why? Because they're scared to tap into their emotion. No, what if the negative emotions come up? Let it come up. Record it. It's not going to harm you. That's the positive action. Listen to music. Music has a rhythm that matches our heartbeats. Listen to any mantra, maybe Gayatri mantra, Hanuman Chalisa. Anything that brings in peace to you is a positive action. While going for a walk, listen to the podcast. That's positive action for me. We all feel, and we have someone who gives that safety to us. Most people lack safety. Remember that. Go talk to that person who makes you feel safe is positive action for me. So these are the few tips, And if you can afford it, please take help of a therapist who can guide you in this process.
Thank you for that. So I want to get into something that we touched on earlier. If someone loses a job, you can look for another job. But there are some situations in life which are very, very hard. And I've seen people in these situations where, really you want to help them. Your heart goes out to them. When people lose, I don't know, a young child or something like that, these very drastic situations, what kind of positive action can you recommend for them? They've gone numb, and sometimes they're numb for years.
Anshu, because I'm a trauma expert, I deal with severe traumas in my clinic. And what I tell people is, when the relatives come with my clients, they're like, when is she going to be all right? When is she going to come out of it? When is she going to snap out of this? So I'm talking about someone who have lost a child, or say, lost a job and not getting a job for 2 years is also trauma for me. What I tell my clients is that let's not jump into the therapy process very soon. Give time for the shock to be registered till your therapist or whoever is putting the shock absorbers in you. So holding space for someone when they're grieving is very important. The problem is we tell people, snap out of it quickly. Death happens to everyone. Look at the person is not even registering what you're saying. I would not give example of someone losing their child, though I have many, to the person who has lost a child and who's coming to me. Because for her child was very important. She's not concerned about someone else's death. So the timing is very important when we integrate examples like this is what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay.
Time is very important. The more time you give for the person to heal, of course, making sure that they're not going into extreme depression. We are going to keep that, that structure in therapy. Or even if a person is not coming for therapy, if the person is going into severe depression, like I said, you have to see the symptoms online and do something about it. I cannot do my tooth surgery. I have to go to the dentist. Same way, I have to take help if it's a severe trauma. Don't tell the person to come out and expect them to have a normal life.
Yeah, thank you. So, Seema, at the end of every session, we do a rapid fire round to summarize the chat. So, very quickly, an exercise that can help people deal with negative emotions in a healthy way.
For me, that would be connecting with my own self and building my attachment to self becomes very strong. Once my attachment to myself becomes very strong, I can deal with everything in life. And
wonderful.
Yeah.
One thing a person can do to prevent toxic positivity.
By not being with people who are toxic positive, who talk only positive all the time and not believing them completely. Put your filters.
And the last very important question, which actually summarizes our whole chat. What is the difference between toxic and healthy positivity?
Okay, very simple. Toxic positivity is in times of grieving or a loss or even negative experience. I know from my soul that I am not addressing my real emotion, but just to show the world. And because I'm conditioned, I'm parroting positive statements. That's toxic positivity. But my positive statement is my statement that I say every day. But at the same time, I'm honoring my negative emotions. And that is the time I'm not talking positive. I honor my emotions and I come back to the layer of my positive emotion. Can you see the difference? Here, there's no scope of negativity at all. I'm not honoring anything. I'm just parroting. I'm not feeling it. This positive statement, you actually feel the positive statements in your body at a cellular level. Body is a very good indicator. Somatic therapy, it's a very good indicator to see your negative and positive emotions. That's the difference.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Seema Hingorrany, for taking the time to give us all these wonderful and powerful insights.
Most welcome and thank you.
Thank you. To my listeners, I hope you learned something new, and I hope we brought you a little closer to leading a healthier, happier life. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do press like, and please encourage your friends and family to subscribe to it. And very importantly, I would love to hear from you. Please do write to me about any topic suggestions you have or any questions in general. My email address is anshu@wellnesscurated.life. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next week.